remember that it was on the hillside in the midst of a burning bush that God had spoke to Moses. Yes, and it was on the mountain when God spoke to Abraham and stopped the sacrifice of Isaac. Yes, it was on the mountain that Elijah heard the small voice of God. And it was on the mountain that God gave Moses the commandments. So in the face of the psalmist's situation, he cries out, I will lift my eyes unto the hills. Our brothers and sisters, I believe that this look is not only a look of anticipation and a look of expectation, but I think the psalmist believes that just as in the past, the God of the mountains will address his need. You see, even when life has beaten us down and our burdens have weighed us down, we ought to look to the hills. Yes, and even when we're in the midst of painful realities that have destroyed our hopes and created chaos of our dreams, how many know we still want to keep looking to the hills? Yes. And we feel like giving up, and it seems like we're down for the last count, about to throw in the towel. We ought to look to the hills expecting a blessing. Yes. It's in the face of downsizing and workforce reduction, we need to keep looking up and holding on. And we find ourselves in the midst of a messy, unresolved court case, or the doctor has given us a negative report, or it seems like our marriage is about to unravel. Just keep on looking up and holding on. Yes, some of us are facing layoffs and unemployment is knocking at the door, but we still have to be determined to keep on looking up and holding on, trusting and believing that God is still answering prayer. Am I right about it? Yes. And so if you're still with me, I want to suggest that the psalmist begins with a statement of anticipation, born of the tradition that he knew well. And that's not all, because it seems to me that this statement is also followed by a question. Yes. A question that's filled with both faith and doubt, filled with hope and fear and joy and anxiety. Nevertheless, I don't think it's a faithless question that should be ignored, even for people of faith. Because the psalmist asks the question, from whence cometh my help? In other words, where does my help come from? But brothers and sisters, believe it or not, this is a question that many people are asking today. And it's a question that has been a part of the human experience since people began asking questions. You see, it's a question that arises out of the human need and the realization that we are not self-sufficient. And so I believe the psalmist recognizes that he can't make it on his own. And so he's looking to the hills with anticipation, trusting in tradition, and yet almost wondering aloud with a mixture of both faith and hope, where does my help come from? My brothers and sisters, this psalmist is believing that the God of Zion will once again respond, yet I think there might also be a tinge of fear and doubt that often characterizes the human predicament, which causes the psalmist to ask the question, where does my help come from? And you know what? This is similar to the writer who asks the question, is there no balm in Gilead? Our brothers and sisters, I'm sure the psalmist in Psalms 120 believes that he can trust that God will respond. But yet he wrestles with the doubt that many faithful people also wrestle with back then and even today. Because some of us might remember that this may have been a similar question that Moses could have asked as he stood with the Red Sea before him and Pharaoh's army behind him. And I could be wrong, but it could have been the question that Gideon may have pondered when he faced an army stronger in numbers than his. And what about David? When he was being pursued by his enemies? And then there was Elijah when he was on Mount Carmel facing the prophets of Baal. Our brothers and sisters, in spite of our trust in God, we too might often find ourselves asking the question, where does my help come from? You see, I believe it's a question of both trust and anxiety. It's a question we might find ourselves asking when all of our resources don't add up to the bills on the table.